Hi, Charlotte.
Good morning, Rabbi.
How are you?
Pretty good, mostly.
Good. I'm glad it's mostly. So we've got a couple more beautiful days.
Very unusual for November to wear short sleeve
Exceedingly.
shirts and have air conditioning on. Ridiculous.
Yeah. It's, to tell you the truth, it was this is like November in San Francisco,
Mm.
not New Jersey. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Rabbi. Yeah, Ricky might be a little late unless she got
No,
on.
she won't because she's right here.
Oh, she's right there. Okay.
Oh, she will be in a moment. She just logged on.
Okay. Just told me to tell you she might be late, but she's on. Good.
I'm
Uh,
on, I made it.
Good.
You made it. You're not even late. You're even early.
Wow, maybe I should
You can
leave
go
to
back and
go
come in
back.
again. We're talking about this unusual weather we're having. I guess it's supposed to get cold Saturday, but I don't know what that means. It's like,
And then it's probably gonna get warm again, and then it's
who
supposed to rain
knows?
Sunday. Who the heck knows?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
It's
I was
crazy.
just talking to, I had a doctor's appointment, my podiatrist, and he said he's tired of this. He wants it to become winter and that's it, and stay winter.
we'll have plenty of winter. It's okay.
I don't think so. I think it's supposed to be very mild.
Well, but I'm sure.
I saw one thing. There's going to be a lot of snow. Who knows?
Let it snow, let it snow.
One of the funny things is somebody once said, "Hi, Yehudi," that
Shalom, Rav Kopke, and Shalom, Charlotte, and Shalom, Ricky, and Shalom. Who else is there? Jody?
Carol.
Shalom,
Carol, sorry.
Yehudi.
Carol.
What's funny is that
Always nice to see you guys.
Mhm.
We haven't seen each other together in over a month.
I
Oh, must
know.
have
It's been
been
way
your
too
good
long, way too long. But we're
grandchild,
back.
great grandchild.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
Mazel tov.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Oh,
I've lost count.
It's
17?
17. That's the Hebrew for Tov.
You have to get one more.
at least.
Well,
So you
no.
have five.
17 means Tov. That's a good number, too.
All right, all right.
In Gematria, Tat is 9, Vav is 6, and Bet is 2.
Two.
So Tov is where the world starts. Vayar Elohim et ha'arti Tov.
I
It's
know.
also
Why-
where the
Tov
Tanakh
ma'od.
ends. You know, Zachra li Elohai Tova.
Oh, yeah. Listen, Tove is good.
Tov, you're a better believer,
I'm
Rabbi
sure you're
Papke.
quite
That was
happy
good.
with 17.
Yeah, that was really good.
Not that there's
Actually,
anything wrong
Chai
with
is much
18.
more recent. You know, I'd be interested in looking and seeing when the first time somebody decided to make Chai 18 significant in terms of Chai.
Yeah, that's a
Because
good
that
question.
actually is not does not go back very long. That's I think it's a nice little research project.
Hmm. Well,
Lech lecha and do some research.
yeah, I have to say that just in general, gematria is fun. Not serious, but fun. It's like, why do we have fish on Shabbat? Fish is dog. Daled 4, Gimel 3, 7. So there we go.
I like that.
Yeah.
Last time I heard that was when I was a kid. I forgot all about it.
Yeah, that's I haven't heard it in a
Ah,
long, long
very good.
time.
Yosef Mokir Shabbat. Yes, yes, yes.
It's where
Except that how many people have fish for Shabbat anymore? That was in a time of the Tanaim and the Amoraim.
Mm-hmm.
When they couldn't shachet.
No, it was because they couldn't afford to have meat every week. Meat
Yeah.
in a time of the Bible was only a luxury that the average person could enjoy on Yom Tov. Okay, well, you know, it was understood to be in 4 times a year. Okay, once the day before Rosh Hashanah, the night of Rosh Hashanah, the night of Shavuot, the night of the first night of Pesach at the Seder, and the night of the last day of Sukkot for Simchat Torah. That was it. The average family, remember, to eat meat, you have to slaughter an animal. There's no such thing as a meat market.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, no, I mean, our eating habits, hi Maddie, our eating habits today, certainly in modern America, are very, very different than what they were in most of the throughout most of history, and perhaps also throughout most of the world.
Yeah, because this is an Eretz Basar. There are 5 countries in the world for which meat is easily available: Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Uruguay, and the United States of America.
Yeah.
You know,
Hello, Rabbi Zucker. How are you?
Hey,
Good
Rabbi
afternoon.
Zucker.
Very good.
Yay.
Thank you.
Good. So good to see you.
Good to be
Yeah.
here.
Where are you hanging out these days, Rabbi Zucker? Are you
He's been
there?
hanging out the same place he always was at home,
Which is
but
where?
otherwise, Stroudsburg.
Hi, Mountie. Madeline, I'm sorry. I just saw your hubby yesterday.
Who, Maddie?
Yeah, Maddie's hubby.
Maddie's hubby.
He knocks your teeth out.
Not allowed to talk like that because of HIPAA. I could never say, "Oh, I heard you were in the office yesterday."
Oh
Why
no,
not?
God forbid. Somebody should know you went to the dentist. I'll tell you, you want if it's generally forbidden even to give any information to your doctor. If you go to another doctor, God forbid, your doctor
Really?
should know.
Mhm.
Well, actually, yes, but I'm only joking that, you could be in the hospital, your doctor would never know. Crazy. Okay, so let's go on to Parashat Lech Lecha. In this case, the Haftarah. Here we'll do a Haftarot for a while. We haven't done them in a while.
And that was my
And,
hubby. That was my husband's haftarah.
Okay, so as Baruch Shekivanti. I am blessed because I had this intention. And also we've taken a look at a number of Haftarot from Second Isaiah, but it's worthwhile to take a look at another one, the first one in the regular cycle. Well, no, not the first one. The second one in the regular cycle of Haftarot. I mean, Second Isaiah, very, very popular for Haftarot. That and Israeli song. Really, one of the greatest lyricists for modern contemporary Israeli music. Let's put it that way.
You might call Second Isaiah the Dylan of ancient Israel.
Oh, Lalo Safek. And David may have been the sweet singer of Israel, but in terms of pop, I think Deuter Isaiah may have won. Okay, let's go on to this Haftarah. It begins with a question. Who would like to read?
I will,
Me,
Rabbi.
mitnadev or mitnadevet.
I'll read, Rabbi.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Charlotte.
Why do you say, O Jacob? Why declare, O Israel? My way is hid.
Hid, yeah.
Oh, from Hashem. I thought it would be hidden.
Well, no,
My cause is ignored by my God.
yeah. So here, typical classical Hebrew poetry, what we used to call parallelism, two phrases that are often saying the same thing. Not necessarily. They, often use different words for a reason, but for our purposes here, very similar. Talking to the people of Israel, for God, why are you asking this question? Or why are you making this statement that you don't know what's going on? That God is not aware of what's happening. Now, first of all, we have to understand the historical background, just kind of a review. The second half of the book of Isaiah was from chapters 40 to 66, was written in the decades following the expulsion from Israel, the destruction of the temple. In fact, physically, the first prophecies in this section seem to be delivered to the people in exile, and the others seem to be being delivered back when the latter parts seem to be delivered when Israel was back in its land. So we're talking from about 538 BCE. The temple is destroyed in 570. Cyrus, the Persian king, after the Persians conquer the Babylonians, Cyrus allows the Jews to return and rebuild their temple. And that's the background for Second Isaiah's words. The first half of the book takes place in the 8th century BCE, and the second half of the book it takes place in the 6th century BCE.
Do you see it all of Deuteronomy Isaiah as one, or do you see it 55 to 66 as Chivrio?
Well, no,
John Paul
I'm
settled that
seeing
for
for
us.
right now, I'm just saying 40 to 66 as
Separate.
one block of material. There are arguments whether there are one, two, or even three prophets. I think the second half.
The
I mean,
world's leading authority, who just recently passed, Shalom Paul, came out in his, set from McCrawley Israel and said, as far as he's concerned, from 40 to 66 is 27
Can't hear
chapters
you.
written by one author. You can't hear me?
No,
And divided into 3 sections of 9
can't hear you
chapters.
still.
Okay, so
I
basically,
hear
I
him.
can hear.
okay,
You
I
can
could just
hear?
okay.
Okay.
I'll explain
Rabbi
afterwards.
Papi
Go ahead,
was
Yudi.
worse.
Yeah, okay. So basically that Shalom Paul, who has written one of the more up-to-date commentaries on Second of Isaiah, came out a few years ago, certainly before he passed away, although they just published posthumously his commentary on Daniel for this Israeli commentary series. He sees them all as being from one hand. My other teacher, I had the pleasure of hearing Shalom Paul and knowing him. He's a great teacher, great teacher. My teacher, Michael Fishbane, I don't know what he thinks now. He seems to, from some of his commentaries, he seems to think there are 2 prophets, perhaps in the second half of the book. I think there's also the reality that there were prophetic schools. And prophets often had disciples, or Yirmiyahu, we know, had the scribe Baruch. We go back to an earlier stage of prophecy, or somewhat earlier stage of Eliyahu and Elisha. Elisha was certainly Eliyahu's disciple. And it's possible that all of these prophetic traditions in the second half of the book came from, I don't know if you can call it a school, but there's also no reason necessarily to assume that one person who's writing over a period of decades, wouldn't, have different topics and different thoughts and slightly different ways of writing. So there was a tendency, certainly at the beginning of the 20th century, where we tore the Bible down into all kinds of different parts. The JEPD for the Torah, and then was there a Torah, or was there a Pentateuch, or was there a Hexateuch, and and even studying Deuteronomy, there are different editings, Leviticus. I think the reality is that most of these things are transmitted orally, not exclusively, but mostly orally. So there was a certain fluidity in the transmissions. And as well, even if they were written down, remember, they're not sticking the thing in a copy machine. Somebody's inscribing it in stone or in papyrus or, whatever. So, and you've got literary text and oral text existing at the same time. You have different locations. There's northern Israel, there's southern Israel. So on one hand, I think we can often break biblical text down to different sources or different traditions, but I think it's also possible to say, um, the traditions are transmitted in an imperfect manner, and often by a community, whether that community is a school or an actual physical community, and the traditions may not always be consistent, even if they're from the exact same source. So we just read Parashat Noach, and it's very easy to see that there are different traditions contained within the narrative of the flood. What may be more important is that there is a tradition about the flood. And different groups
It better to say
preserve
there's
different
more than one
elements.
tradition about the flood.
Yeah,
Like Cassuto said it.
yeah.
You know, in other words, if you find contradictions in Sefer Bereshit, he pointed out the most glaring contradiction is the wives of Esau. But since they're both attributed to P, that doesn't help. Okay. In other words, you're going to have to admit the fact that not knowing which of the traditions was the exact correct one, I gave you both.
Yeah. And again, I think that they had a different notion. You know, they were often transmitting traditions. They wanted to preserve it all. And they weren't as worried sometimes about consistency. They, scribes wrote things into the texts. We have actually from this second half of the book of Isaiah, we have words interpolated probably by a scribe, but they became part of the biblical text, the Masoretic text. So I think it's sufficient for now. I mean, you could read, if you can read Hebrew, you can read Shalom Paul's excellent commentary.
It's
You
been
could read.
published in English. It's been translated. And Erdman's has published.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Quite some about 5 years it's been available already.
Oh, okay.
And it's also available on Kindle, which is makes it even more accessible.
Yes, yes. But Fishbane's got his introductions and his major book in the Haftarot, the long version of the commentary that we have in our Eitz Chaim. So, but for now, I just want to study the text.
Where would you, Rabbi Poppy?
The reality is that for us, we're looking at the Haftarah.
I didn't mean to cause a quarter hour discursus.
No, it was a great point, because this is an important part of the scholarship in Sefer Yeshayahu. But sometimes what is, we don't shy away from those questions. So I think that it wasn't, indeed a very, very good comment, and worthwhile digression. But let's go back to the text. So we have this question. Clearly, the Israelites are in exile at this point, and you can understand why they might ask these questions. Our temple has been destroyed. We've been thrown out of our land. We were defeated. I'm sure they're not feeling great. But now we hear God's answer. Sorry, Charlotte. Now you can go on.
Do you not know? Have you not heard? Hashem is God from of old, creator of the earth from end to end, who never grows faint or weary, whose wisdom cannot be fathomed.
Okay, so you're worried about this. God doesn't know what's happening to us. And Isaiah's response is, or like I should say, God's response is, someone just unpack this.
God is omniscient.
Yeah, God. We're talking about God, the one who created the earth, who never grows faint or weary, whose wisdom cannot be fathomed. He's beyond. How could you possibly say this when we're talking about God? That can't possibly be. By the way, this expression here we have, Halo yadata im lo shamata, do you not know? Have you not heard? Elohei olam Adonai, the creator of the earth, Borek tzot haaretz, fashions the ends of the earth, creator of the earth from end to end, as they translate here. Tzot haaretz, that is going to come again and again in this Haftarah, and an expression emphasizing God's power over the entire, well, really the entire cosmos, but really the entire earth. Yehudi, you had a question? You had a comment?
God is omniscient is the subject of the next several verses.
Right.
But how does that answer the question? The question, they're not saying God is not omniscient. They're simply saying God no longer cares about it.
Right. We're going to, and the Haftarah will get to that.
With a statement of that nature.
Yeah. So the prophet is building up the argument. And it to some extent continues from what was said earlier in the chapter, For that, you have to go back to last week's Haftarah. This is kind of a theme that comes in Isaiah's writing, or second Isaiah's writings, that the contrast between our limited knowledge and limited experience and God's overwhelming power and knowledge. And when we consider that, we also have to, if that's true for us, it's also true for our enemies. So we're worried, we're concerned, and you can understand why the Israelites are asking that question. Now, so God's power, how can that be seen? Go on, Charlotte. Charlotte, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, good. Continue reading. Who gives?
Who gives strength to the weary, fresh vigor to the spent.
Yeah, so again, parallel, gives strength. He never grows faint or weary, and he even has enough to give to everybody else. And important to point out, hanotein liyaev koach. That's a phrase that we see again and again in our tradition. So here in footnote 1,
Source
that
for
is
the verse in the Berkot
Hashachar.
Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who gives strength to the weary.
Yeah,
And
Baruch
echoed,
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, hanotein liyaev koach. That's where it comes right from this verse. But then this is also used in a very famous zemer, a very famous song for Shabbat. Go on.
and echoed in the Shabbat Zemer, Yom Shabbaton. Blessed is the one who gives strength to the weary. Noah's dove found a resting place on this day, and on it all the weary will rest.
Yeah, and you can hear in the Hebrew, Baruch hanotein liyaef koach, and Yona Matzah vo Manoach. Dove found a resting place on it. It's tradition that it was on Shabbat that the dove found a place to rest. Visham yanuchu yigiei choach, and those who are exhausted, they will be able to rest on Shabbat. So, kind of just an important line that comes again and again. Going on, back in the Haftorah.
Youths may grow faint and weary, and young men stumble and fall.
Now, but before we go on, do we normally expect young people to get
Stumble?
exhausted and fall?
No.
No.
Right, no, the young, they're strong, they're healthy, they can keep going, but even youth, they may spend themselves, they have all this boundless energy, but go on.
But they who trust in Hashem shall renew their strength. As eagles grow new plumes, they shall run and not grow weary. They shall march and not grow faint.
And that's beginning to answer the question, finally, that those who trust in God, their strength will be renewed. And a couple interesting things here. First of all, they shall run and not grow weary. Yarutzu velo yiga'u. That was on the T-shirts of the running club at JTS when I was at the seminary. But this interesting. Well, first of all, let's take a look now on this first section at some of the traditional mafarshim on this section.
Creator of the earth from end to end, whose wisdom cannot be fathomed, and one who has such strength and such wisdom, he knows the thoughts. Why does he delay your benefit, only to terminate the transgression and to expiate the sin through afflictions?
Okay, so Rashi is commenting here. Why, God who knows everything, why, the people are wondering, why hasn't God responded? And Rashi is trying to explain. Why is he delaying the redemption, if you will?
He wants them to stop sinning or terminate their transgression.
Right. And through their afflictions to expiate the sin. So it's a process. They just have to finish going through. as much as Isaiah brings comfort, certainly second Isaiah certainly brings comfort to the people, he's also pointing out, listen, you guys blew it and you have to be punished. But that punishment is only going to be limited. So Rashi is here emphasizing very much, trying to explain, why they're going through this suffering. And we'll see that more even in Radak's commentary, Rabbi David Kimchi. Go on.
Hashem is God from of old. Elohe means judge, as the case of both parties shall come before God.
Yeah, in the Hebrew, Ad ha-Elohim yavod davar shnehem. In the case, so here, clearly God is acting as a judge, and we know that elsewhere in the Bible, the term Elohim does not necessarily mean gods. I mean, it could mean God, it could mean gods, but also judges, very clearly in a number of sections.
And so
Also Deuteronomy.
Yeah, Deuteronomy, exactly. Go ahead. And so
every instance of God that refers to God, may he be blessed. The connotation is judge of the earth, who watches over it and judges every person as she or he is. However, we cannot reach the understanding of his judgment in every situation. Therefore, he said, how can you think that he will not watch over you when he watches over the entire world? He created it, and because one is his handiwork, he definitely watches over the person. And since he is truly the judge of the world, he will exact judgment from those who oppress you.
Okay, so and I skipped a number of sections here where Kimchi is talking about God's power in terms of running the universe. And causing and moving the different elements of the cosmos, the different galgalim, the different spheres that are part of the medieval understanding of the universe. So go on.
If so, it is not out of exhaustion that God does not execute judgment against the evil ones that oppress Israel. And if you say that because he created the world and establishes it with his great power, watches over it and judges it, it is in his power to judge at any time. There is no pause to his power. Why has God seen this long time Israel's trouble in exile and does not save them from their trouble and does not execute judgment against the evil ones? The answer is that there is not limit.
There is no limit, sorry.
To God's understanding, and we do not know, nor can we reach his judgment, his wisdom and understanding, nor can we seek after it to know it. But he knows what he will do. We, however, do not understand and know. That is it. And that is it.
So, what is Kimchi saying here? That, it seems that God is remaining silent or is not paying attention. And what is his response? What is
patience? You don't see the whole picture.
Exactly. We don't understand it all. And you see that both Rashi and Kimchi, I mean, living at different times, but one gets the sense that they're speaking not just about the biblical period and the biblical community that is living in exile, but, maybe they're also speaking to their own communities. Because they've been in exile for a long time. Both of certainly Rashi and Kimchi were living a long time before the founding of the state of Israel and before there seems to be any answer to the exile. So, I think it's these commentaries from Kimchi and from Rashi reflect something that Israel has done. We read these prophecies of Isaiah, we read these words and understand them that they are speaking to the biblical communities, but at the same time, we recognize that they may also have significant meaning for our generation or more contemporary times. So, I mean, I think that on one hand, they are interpreting or explaining the text. On the other hand, they're also, I think, you don't have to agree with me, but I think they're also speaking from personal experience. And now this very unusual thing that they will be renewed as eagles grow new plumes. And go ahead.
Our teacher, Saadia, wrote
That's Sadia HaGaon.
wrote that the eagle for 10 years ascends very high in the heavens to the heat of the sun, then throws himself to the sea because of the great heat, molts his feathers, is renewed afterwards, sprouts wings, and is restored to the days of its youth. So every 10 years until the 100th year, when it ascends as its custom and falls into the sea and dies.
So here we have this, and you have the notion as well here in Psalm 103, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. There's a sense that the eagle grows new plumes. And Radak brings out this much more extensive legend that Saadia quotes. It's kind of an interesting legend, but what's interesting is how we understand that. So, and here are, I think, two very interesting ways of looking at this. Would somebody like to go on here? This image of eagles growing new plumes. Any volunteers?
I will.
Okay,
Rabbi
thank you,
Mordechai,
Ricky.
start there or Shalom?
Shalom, Paul.
Shalom Paul suggests that the image is reminiscent of the description of the redemption of the people from Egypt and will carry you on eagle's wings.
Yeah, which, an interesting suggestion, because certainly the image of the Exodus is used by the prophets to talk about the restoration of Israel, the return of Israel to its land. And now, a little bit more of a drash is Rabbi Mordechai Silverstein. He writes a series of studies in Haftarah for Fuchsberg Center, our center in Jerusalem. Go on.
Rabbi Mordechai Silverstein, in the Fuchsberg Jerusalem series of studies in the Haftarah, writes, this interpretation bears an incredible resemblance to the mythological phoenix, a bird known in the ancient world for its ability to regenerate and reincarnate itself. Sadia apparently seized upon this popular legend and associated it with Isaiah's Nesher.
Nesher is eagle.
Right. To produce a symbol of constant renewal. This symbol represented for Sadia the fate of the Jewish people in the world. They will perpetually rise up out of the ashes, invigorated with renewed strength to build a future even greater than the past.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what Sadia had in mind, but it's an intriguing suggestion. And this is one of those lines that, since when do eagles grow new plumes? And just some interesting comments on how we understand or may understand of that. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next section of the Haftarah. Go ahead, Ricky.
Stay in silence.
Mm-hmm.
Stand silent before me, coastlands, and let nations renew their strength. Let them approach to state their case. Let us come forward together for argument.
So what is it picturing here? What is the prophet picturing here? Again, the prophet is speaking on behalf of God. What is God saying to the nations?
God is judge of the world.
Right. He's saying, okay, guys, come here. Bring your case. Let's come forward for an argument. We have God is very often presented as the shofet, who is judging. That's true with his own people, with Israel, but also to the other nations. And it's interesting. Stand before me, coastlands. In modern Hebrew, is an island. And again, just kind of a parallel way. Umim, nations. Iyim, islands or coastlands. And again, the similar idea, let them approach to state their case. Let us come forward together for argument. Okay, go on.
Who
Connection
has
of this Haftarah to the
Pardon me. Pardon me?
I don't get the connection of this Haftarah to the Parsha.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Okay.
Yeah.
So far.
It's a thin one, but it's there.
Yeah, very clear, but yeah.
Who has roused a victor from the east, summoned him to God's service, has delivered up nations to him and trodden sovereigns down, has rendered their swords like dust, their bows like windblown straw.
Yeah, so interesting line. Mi heir mi mizrach tzedek ikraehu leraglo, was roused, literally, mi heir mi mizrach, who has roused from the east, tzedek ikraehu leraglo, a victor that he has summoned to his service. So first of all, let's go down, take a look at this is first of all Rashi on this verse down here. Who aroused
Who
from the
aroused
east?
from the east? One whom righteousness accompanied? Who aroused Abraham to bring him from Haran, which is in the east, and the righteousness that he would perform that was opposite his feet wherever he went?
Yeah. So according to Rashi, who is this verse talking about?
Abraham.
Avram, because remember, he came from the east. So if you understand that as Avraham, that could be a connection to the parasha, because what is our parasha? Lech lecha me'artzecha mi'moladecha mi'beit avicha. Go out from your land, your birthplace, your father's home, etc., and go to this land that I will show you. And he travels. That parasha imagines him traveling from Mesopotamia to Eretz Yisrael, although we know he's really coming just from Haran. Either way, he's coming from the east. And Rashi is reading it the way the Ta'amim do. If we look at the Ta'amim, the accents, we often call tropes. Yeah, here. Mi ha'ir mi mizrach. That is a zakif katon, which is a pause. That's one phrase. Tzedek ikrayu l'raglo. That's the next phrase, according to the Ta'amim. And that's how Rashi is reading it. What a shock. That's not the only way to read it. So we have to again go down to a footnote here. Keep going, Ricky.
Rashi is reading the verse according to the Te'amim. The translation follows Targum Yonatan.
Yeah, so just as there were Targumim on the Pentateuch, on the Chumash, so too there were translations, Aramaic translations on the books of Nevi'im. And they have a tendency to be a little bit more midrashic. You know, you have Targum Unclus on Torah, which is pretty straightforward as a translation, but the other translations will add a little bit more. And here we have, and you can read the translation of the Targum, translation of the translation.
Who openly brought Abraham from the east, the chosen of the righteous in truth to his place. He delivered up nations before him and broke in pieces mighty kings. He cast the slain down like the dust before his sword, and he pursued them like stubble before his bow.
Yeah, bow. Yeah, so on one hand, it's translating the verse. On the other hand, it's adding a little bit. You know, Avraham, who is the righteous person. And that's certainly how the translation here is reading it. Who has roused a victor from the east? Tzedek here is not righteous necessarily, but victor. Within the semantic range of the word tzedek is not just righteousness, but also victory.
In other words, you're saying that the Targum Yonatan is reading tzedek as if it really meant tzaddik. In other words, Abraham.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also they're reading it not according to the Ta'amim. They're reading it.
Right, I understand that, but I want to know why they did that.
Tzedek,
Right. So if you
who has
say,
brought from the
yeah,
east a righteous person, or you can even, as the JPS translation, who has roused a victor from the east. The Targum certainly is seeing it as a righteous person. So just it's an unusual syntax, and
but it
but
isn't really, because if you take a look at the verse and you divide it up into sections, from a poetic point of view, it works pretty well the way Trump has it. I mean, here,
yeah,
Mizrach, 3 words. Tzedek Yikreir I go. Also 3 words.
yep,
Okay. You came in front of Goyim, that's 3 more words.
3 words,
Okay.
Mlachim
Or you
Yard.
could take the phrase Goyim Malachim Yard, and that would just be a parenthetical addition, and he came
Yeah.
Kafarch are both 3 words. Kikashti Daf Kashta. In other words, I never found, no, I don't have to say that Mizrach is Avram Avinu. It's obvious that it's Koresh. It's just simply, and I don't have any problem with reading it the way that Trump has it, even if it is Koresh. In other words,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just that this kind of unusual phrase, which is not necessarily that unusual, as he correctly points out. You can read it just fine, but that never, we have to realize that never stops our rabbis. No matter how clear a verse is, no matter how
are you saying
reasonable a
though that
reading is.
the truck reflecting the midrash? It doesn't have to be.
No,
No,
it
it
I'm
doesn't
not
have
saying
to
that
be.
this necessarily.
Sometimes it does.
Yeah,
But in this case, I think the burden of proof will be on the person who says that's the intent here. I don't think that's the intent.
right.
Plus, who can prove that you had the ta'amim fitting in the copy that they looked at?
I can
Well,
just tell you right off the bat an example. In the second verse of Ruth, Shem Ha'ish Elimelech V'Shem Ishto Naomi V'Shem Shnei Banav, and then you have, as the truck reads it, as if Machlon V'Chayon Efratim, stop. Beit Lechem Yehuda, but nobody without the truck, nobody would ever think of reading it like that.
right.
They'd say V'Shnei Shnei Banav, Machlon V'Chayon, stop. And then Ephratim Beit Lechem Yehuda. So the truck is following a midrash that said Ephratim means princes, and Machlon L'Kilyon had to be princes in order to marry the princesses Ruth and Arpa. Okay,
Right.
That's a simple example from a very famous verse. Okay,
Yeah. Okay. But also important is in terms of this mi heir mi mizrach. It's just following the trope. Take a look here in the once again. First of where am I? No, I'm in the wrong place here. I'm missing something here.
The man from the east.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a moment. Okay, since we read Rashi, on that verse, let's read Ibn Ezra.
The man from the east. The ancients refer this expression to Abraham, who defeated the kings and broke the idols, especially because of the words, the seed of Abraham,
Right.
my friend.
That appears later in the Haftarah. Go on.
This may be correct. My opinion is that this is referring to Cyrus, because all these chapters are connected by their contents.
And compare calling a ravenous bird.
Calling a ravenous bird from the east, and I have raised up one from the north, and he shall come from the rising of the sun, shall he call upon my name. Besides, the name of Cyrus is distinctly mentioned.
Yeah, so Ibn Ezra is, this is pretty much what all modern scholars follow. That, it's talking about Koresh. It's talking about Cyrus. So just so it's not necessarily a difficult verse, but there are a number of points that have become a point of discussion. And I don't know what happened to the comment I'm looking for. Did I get rid of it? Um,
Hmm.
yes, actually, okay, Mi'er mi Mizrach Tzedek. Then it goes on, sorry, back to the verse. Oh, and sorry, just all these different lines. Okay, so well, yeah, let's go on. So we have this Mi'er mi Mizrach, and then going on, Ricky, he pursues them.
He pursues them. He goes on unscathed. No shackle is placed on his feet.
This is the victor from the east. Nothing's holding him back. Go on.
Who has wrought and achieved this? The one who announced the generations from the start. I, Hashem, who is first, and will be with the last as well.
Okay, couple things on this verse. Here we have the footnote. We have a couple questions here. And if we looked at the previous section, not part of our Haftarah, but the previous part of the chapter, we'll see there are a number of rhetorical questions that the prophet asks or God asks. Number 4 here.
This continues a series of rhetorical questions begun earlier in the chapter, all designed to show the greatness and unique sovereignty of God.
Yeah, so it's, rhetorical questions, but it's a rhetorical device. Me, who did this? Who did this? Who did this? Who did this? God. And again, it's somewhat answering the question, like, God is not paying attention. Wait a minute here. Let's understand God's knowledge and God's power and what God can do. And there's also something important here when he says, the one who announced the generations from the start, Ani Adonai, Rishon, Ani Adonai Rishon. I, Adonai, am first. Ve'ata achronim anihu, and I will be with the last as well. And take a look now at footnote 4.
We did footnote 4.
We just did 4, sorry, 5.
God exists forever. See also 44:6 and 48:12. The declaration, I am he, Ani who, is connected more than 20 times to God's uniqueness and eternal nature.
And just a few other examples. So Paul just points out that, this is a theme that comes again and again in 2nd Isaiah, that God is eternal. God is there.
I think it's worthwhile pointing out also that for the neighboring culture, certainly Canaanite culture, there is the concept of gods that die.
Yeah.
A Dumuzi, Tammuz, dies in the summertime and is resurrected with that type of thing. We know it also in Greek literature.
Right. The gods live and die. They're not necessarily eternal.
Right. So this is a necessary reminder. That's, God, our God is eternal.
Yes, and we're going to see, thank you, because that's a great point, that we're going to see a distinction being made between the idol worshippers and Israel. So let's make a clear distinction between us and them. Okay, so while this is going on in this court case, go ahead, Ricky. The coastlands.
The coastlands look on in fear. The ends of earth tremble.
Again, that phrase "kitzot haaretz." So it's like, these various phrases return there. They may have been part of the earlier part of the chapter. They return here. They may be part of the later part of the chapter. They're linguistic cues that connect all of this together. So as you follow along and reading Haftarah, say, oh, is this a repetition? Do we have these words coming again and again? And sometimes they're there for emphasis, and sometimes they're just there to draw connections between different parts.
The craftsmen draw near and come. Each one helps the other, saying to his fellow, take courage. The woodworker encourages the smith. He who flattens with the hammer encourages him who pounds the anvil. He says of the riveting, it is good, and he fixes it with nails that it may not topple.
Okay, so all the nations, they're working together to kind of defend themselves, if you will. They're going to strengthen themselves. They're working together for that. However, let's go on.
Who openly brought Abraham from the east.
Sorry.
But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, seed of Abraham, my friend, you who I drew from the ends of the earth and called from its far corners, to whom I said, you are my servant. I chose you. I have not rejected you.
Yeah, so you whom I drew from the ends of the earth, the Hebrew here, asher hechezakticha, same word as, them saying to each other, the idolaters, chazak. They're using all of these physical things to strengthen themselves, but who strengthens Israel?
God.
God. It's a contrast here. God is going to take care of them. Okay, so here, first of all, again, paying attention a little bit to the language. V'ata Yisrael Avdi, is that the word? I'm sorry, I don't have the whole thing. V'ata Yisrael Avdi, Yaakov asher becharticha, Zera Avraham Oavi. So let's take a look. Would somebody like to go on here? Footnote 7.
I'll read.
Thank you, Maddie.
Paul makes a number of points. The repetition of the ending, what's that?
Ticha.
Ticha, appearing so many times in succession, emphasizes the closeness of Israel and her God.
Yeah, we'll see that return again and again in a few places.
The idea of the chosen one of the God applied to the king is well known from
the ancient Near East.
Ancient Near East, particularly in Assyrian prophecies. The language of chosenness is frequent in Isaiah and also appears in Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy, chosenness is through merit. In Isaiah, it is encouragement and appointment to a mission.
Yeah, and we saw that very much in the earlier part of the chapter, last week's Haftorah, that, Israel is called to a mission. In Deuteronomy, we have similar language, but God is choosing Israel for their merit, because they're ancestors, God loves them. So just a number of points here. One, paying attention to the language. Two, the language does reflect its ancient Near Eastern background. Apparently, Shalom Paul makes the comment that some of this language is very similar to Ishtar talking about the Assyrian kings, talking to them as her chosen ones, but then also understanding this whole notion of chosenness within Israel. Okay. And again, we have Sot Yisrael, from the edges of the earth. And here in that line, we have Asher Echzakticha, Becharticha, Velo Ma'asticha. And here too in the next verse, Al tira ki imcha ani, al tishtakni Elohecha, imatzticha, af azarticha, af timakticha b'min tzidki. I have done this for you. So emphasizing the relationship. Go ahead. Maddie, fear not.
Fear not, for I am with you. Be not frightened, for I am your God. I strengthen you and I help you. I uphold you with my victorious right hand.
Yeah, so again, contrast. They have to depend on each other, the idolaters. They have to depend on their technology. But no, God is the one who is strengthening Israel.
Go on.
Go on.
Shamed and chagrined shall be all who contend with you. They who strive with you shall become as naught and shall perish. You may seek, but shall not find. Those who struggle with you, less than nothing shall be the men who battle against you. For I am Hashem, For I, Hashem, am your God, who grasped your right hand, who say to you, have no fear, I will be your help.
Yeah, so again, the word Ani Adonai Elohecha machazik yeminecha, who grasped your right hand, but again, a play on the word chazak. And once again, Ani azarticha, I will be your help. So long answer to those initial questions, like have patience. God knows, God understands, and it will be God who will strengthen you, God who will allow you to defeat all of your enemies. Now, kind of an interesting phrase here. Keep going.
For
Fear not.
okay. Fear not, O worm, Yaakov, O men of Israel, I will help you, declares Hashem. I, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel.
Yeah, so kind of an interesting phrase. Al tira tola'at Yaakov. Fear not, O worm, Jacob. Doesn't sound like the loveliest way to refer to Jacob. But then we'll see the commentary on that. Actually, let's go to that.
Is it possible the Torah might have the double entendre meaning of, the special nice color that's put into the big day kahuna? In other words, I grant you, worm is clearly what you're going to think when you see it. But in the back of your mind, Matei Yisrael means Anshe Yisrael.
Right.
Of course, sometimes that word is used for a small number, like in Vizota Bracha, Yehi Ru'uvein Ve'ayamot Vihi Mitav Mispar. So Mitav, the name is very common in antediluvian names, Metushael, Metushelach. Okay, so I'm just saying it is a strange phrase if you take it to mean nothing, no overtones but work.
Yeah, well, first of all, we'll come to the commentaries, but interesting to take a look at where is it? Yes. Oh, I don't know what happened to my oh yes, here it goes. Number 8 here. Can you see that?
Fishbane suggests that this unusual phrase, Matai Yisrael, Matei Yisrael, men of Israel, could be vocalized as moti, that is similar to the Akkadian mutu, maggot, thus creating a synonymous parallelism.
Yeah, so if you have a worm Jacob, maggot Israel. So that's one suggestion.
Rashi in Old French has worms.
Yeah, and here's what Paul suggests.
Of course, that's a town he knows well.
Yeah.
Paul suggests a different parallelism. I'm not reading that.
Tolat Rima, which is very common in the Bible.
It's a parallelism found elsewhere in Tanakh, possibly emending the text to Ramah.
Rimat.
Rimat, oh right. Rimat instead of
Mitei.
Mitei.
Yeah, so it's an unusual phrase, possible to understand it differently, and I think all of the above. It may have, the most radical, of course, is to actually amend the text, and also to assume that Mitei really should be moti like the Akkadian, but also tolat, from the more positive notion. So on one hand, it's trying to show the sense of degradation that Israel is suffering. You see yourselves as worms. That doesn't matter. I'm going to help you. I, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. And just finish off the text. So the text just finishes, it's using agricultural imagery. I'm going to make you like a threshing board. Basically, you're going to grind up all your enemies, just like you get rid of the chaff. And glory in the Holy One in Israel, Kadosh Yisrael. But let's first of all, a couple comments from our Mefarshim. Go ahead, Maddie, my friend.
My friend who loves me. It is not the same as
Ahuvi.
Ahuvi, who is loved by me, because who loves me is active.
Yeah, just kind of interesting that, Zera Avraham Ohavi, the person who loves me. It's not just who is loved by me, but it's actually Avraham was much more active. But here coming back to the notion of Tolat.
Fear not.
Also,
Oh, we read that already, didn't we?
no, fear not, O worm, Jacob.
Fear not, O worm Jacob, because they are weak in exile like a worm. In Yelam Denu,
Which is Midrash Tanchuma.
Why is Israel compared to a worm? To teach us that just as a worm can only strike at cedar trees with its mouth, that is soft yet strikes at the hard cedar tree, so Israel, all its power is in prayer, and strikes against the wicked of the world that are hard as cedar trees.
Yeah, so and then he puts they are compared to cedar trees, and he quotes a verse. So again, one gets the sense that Kimchi is less of a commentary and as much a sermon, where we understand we have this. It sounds terrible to be called a worm, but just think, a worm can get into the hardest wood. And how is that possible? This squishy little worm, and yet it can knock down hard cedar. So too, Israel can defeat its enemies. So it starts off with the question: what's going on here, God? You're not paying attention to us. And the answer is,
according to Michael, one of my commentators here, points out that this is the first time in the Shayar Sheni that the verb ga'al was used. And it will be used another 13 times before the book is over. 12 more times, 13 altogether.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, then you can also add the idea that even though things don't, you look now down and low, but the day's going to come when you're going to get to the point of Techelet Riyagamam Tovachani.
Yeah, no, interesting about the
I mean, that's midrashic, but it's not that far-fetched.
Right. And by the way, it's not so midrashic, because coming back to footnote 9, talking about the appellation Kadosh Yisrael, the Holy One of Israel. Shalom Paul says, go on. Maddie, Paul, the very last line.
Common appellation in Deutero-Isaiah, connected to God's salvific power.
Yeah, his power to save. So that, Dafka Kadosh Yisrael, that expression.
But that he gets from first Isaiah.
Well, exactly. And that's what Paul says. Likely influenced by the prophet of the first half of the book, where the combination is used 12 times, Kadosh Yisrael.
Elsewhere in Tanakh, it's probably maybe 4 or 5 times altogether.
Yeah.
It's a Yisrael complex, trademark.
Yeah. So it is very, one, just get a sense of the language, how much the same language is used throughout the book, sometimes unique to the prophet and sometimes not, drawing on earlier traditions, and just this very powerful message. And now, why do you think this was a final question? I'm sorry, we're over by 1 minute, but Carol, any idea on why this was chosen as the Haftarah for Parashat Lech Lecha?
I don't think there's much of a connection. If I read the Haftarah and tried to make it, I wouldn't get anything from the Pasha.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to verse 8. Ata Yisrael Avdi Yaakov, you Israel, Avdi Yaakov, Asher Becharticha, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, Zera Avraham Ohavi, the seed of Avraham who loves me, Asher Echzakticha Miktzot Haaretz, whom I drew from the ends of the earth and called from its far corners. What happens in our parasha?
He leaves Aram Naharaim.
Right, but God calls him Lech Lecha. God calls him. So it's not, as Rabbi Zucker said, it's not necessarily something that is huge, but it's very much there. That, it's a reference to God calling Avraham. And again, we saw how our tradition connected this, the victor from the east with Avraham, so that this prophecy of really comfort and consolation is connected to the parsha. Remember how God called our ancestor Abraham. And what happened in the past will again happen in the future. It's not God's promise will continue. God's promise will be fulfilled. In that way, the Haftarah comes as kind of a commentary on the parasha.
Carol, you are used to a certain extent, even Ezra's. It's probably Cyrus, but the rabbis saw it much more likely as from this phrase as referring to Abraham, as has been really the major point of Rabbi Popke's lesson. And that ends up being the connection, the reference to Abraham who loves God.
Okay.
And again, how this Haftarah becomes kind of a commentary, I'm sure throughout the generations, Jews reading this parasha go, okay, great. These promises are wonderful. But no, we're in exile. What's happened to all these promises that God made? And of course, within the Tanakh, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are all buried in Israel, but Yaakov is brought back. The people come from Egyptian slavery and return. And again, after the destruction of the temple, the people come back and return and rebuild the temple. But then we're in a much, 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 much longer exile. But here the Haftarah is being used to say,
Patience.
Rabbi Zucker said
come.
before, patience.
It will come.
Yeah.
Thank goodness in the 19th century, Zionists got a little bit impatient and did it themselves.
Yes.
With God's help.
Right. So wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Rabbi Poppy.
And nice to be back in the cycle of things here.
Indeed.
Yeah.